Bill and Rosalie Furler from the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. Hey, welcome to another great morning here. And welcome to Church on the Beach. Today we're going to continue on with the call of God. I want to touch on another one of my favourite characters in the Bible, David. You can read for yourself in 1 Samuel chapter 16. Now the Lord said to Samuel, "You have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as king of Israel. So fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king." When Samuel the prophet arrived there at the house of Jesse, he took one look at Eliab, his son, and said, "Surely this is the Lord's anointed." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him." The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Samuel moved on, one son after the other, but there wasn't one he could anoint to be king. Then Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" "There is still the youngest," Jesse replied, "but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and the goats." "Send for him at once," Samuel said. "We will not sit down until he arrives." So when David arrived, he stood there in the midst of his brothers. And Samuel took that flask of olive oil and poured it over David. And on that day the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. And as the Apostle Paul said in Acts chapter 13 verse 22, "But God removed Saul and replaced him with David, a man about whom God said, 'I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do.'" Our early life and what we go through can have a great bearing in how we are called and what God expects from us. David was busy when God called him. He was out in the fields attending to his father's flocks. He had learned how to care for them and protect them from wild animals. He would have known all of the sheep by name. The sheep would follow him. Yes, his early experiences with the sheep enabled him to write one of the most read psalms in the Bible. Let me share Psalm 23 with you. "The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honour to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort and protect me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honour me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever." Hope you enjoyed Psalm 23. It's one of my favourites. It's meant so much to me in my life. You can see plainly that David wrote it out of his early experiences with the sheep. David was first anointed in the midst of his brothers. Then he was anointed to be king of Judah, and finally king over all of Israel. Yes, he was also anointed as prophet, priest, and king. In the call of God in all of our lives, there is progress and progression. I remember in my early childhood, there was so much adventure in my life. We lived close to a river that was surrounded by hills, and I'd spend all my spare time just exploring everything I could. Now I know this had a big influence on my future call of God. Think about your early life and what you desire to do for God now. Listen to this from Psalm 78, verses 70 to 72. He chose his servant David, calling him from the sheep pens. He took David from tending the ewes and the lambs and made him the shepherd of Jacob's descendants. God's own people Israel, he cared for them with a true heart and led them with skillful hands. I'm sure that God has found you a person after his own heart that he can do his will through.